Let's start with a really big question. What if our universe isn't this infinite, kind of messy thing we imagine, but is actually a perfectly coded, finite system? We're about to dive into a radical new framework that says exactly that, proposing an entirely new operating system for reality called GFTM-44.
You see, that question, it really hits at the heart of a huge problem in physics. Think of it like a glitch in the software we use to describe reality. For decades, our best theories have been haunted by this one persistent bug, the problem of generic ultraviolet divergences, or to put it simply, infinity.
Okay, so to really get what this new system is all about, we have to first understand the problem it's trying to fix. And I want to be clear here, this is not some small, trivial issue. We're talking about a deep structural flaw, a flaw that physicists have basically been putting band-aids on for more than half a century.
So, picture this. You're running a program, a very sophisticated one, to calculate something basic, like a property of an electron. But instead of giving you a number, the computer just breaks and spits out infinity over and over again. Well, that's pretty much what happens with our current physical models. These infinities, these divergences, they aren't just calculation errors. They're a massive red flag, a signal that the very foundation, the mathematical assumptions we're using, might be just plain wrong.
Now, to deal with this, physicists came up with a really clever workaround. It's a mathematical patch called renormalization. And it works, kind of. It lets you sort of sweep the infinities under the rug so you can get the right answers. But here's the thing. It's just a patch. It's a procedure, not a real solution. It never explains why the infinities are there to begin with. All it really does is highlight this massive mismatch between our math and what we suspect is the true finite nature of the vacuum.
Okay, so what if we just stopped trying to patch the broken software? What if, instead, we installed a completely new operating system? One that's designed from the very beginning to be free of these problems, to be, renormalization-free.
And that is the core idea, the radical reframing behind the GFTM-44 framework. The argument is simple but profound. The glitch isn't in the universe itself. The glitch is in our blueprint. It's our assumption that reality is built on this idea of an infinite continuum. So GFTM-44 throws that out and starts with a totally different axiom. The universe is finite, period.
So instead of that messy, infinite field, GFTM-44 gives us a clean, finite blueprint, a 12 by 12 grid called the operator vacuum matrix. Seriously, you can think of this as the literal source code for reality. The rows, which we call pi, are the actions, the verbs of the universe, what can happen. And the columns, omega, are the substrate, the different layers of the vacuum where these actions unfold.
And that's it. The whole system is built from just these 144 irreducible modes. That's not an approximation, it's the whole shebang. Every particle, every force, every single interaction, it's all just a different combination of these 144 fundamental pieces. So what you get is a new system that's built from the ground up to be totally complete and totally finite. There's no fluff, no gauge redundancies, no weird auxiliary fields, and absolutely no room for those old bugs to creep in. Infinities just can't exist here. They are structurally impossible by the very design of the system. It's a closed, complete description.
All right, so if you have a new operating system, you're going to need a new set of rules to keep it from crashing, right? Well, GFTM-44 has these two core principles, and they're called structural closure laws. Honestly, you can just think of them as a firewall for reality itself.
And these aren't your typical physical laws. No, they're more like hard-coded rules of grammar for the entire system. They strictly dictate how the actions and the vacuum layers are allowed to combine. And because of that, they make it impossible for the system to ever generate those infinities, those divergences that plague our current theories.
So let's look at the first rule. It's called the Pimax law. And it's basically a brake on complexity. It prevents this runaway effect, this recursive complexity amplification. What it says is, when two actions combine, the result can never be more complex than whichever of the two was the most complex to begin with. It puts a hard ceiling on things.
Then you've got the second rule, omega lock. This one is a stability protocol for the vacuum itself. It's what ensures everything fits together correctly, what physicists call phase compatibility and monotone depth ordering. In simple terms, this rule is what stops the very fabric of reality from just tearing itself apart or spiraling out of control.
Okay, great. So we have this matrix and we have these rules, but where are the particles? Where's all the stuff we actually see in the universe?
And this, right here, is where GFTM-144 makes its most profound, most mind-bending shift in thinking.
First off, in this framework, we completely throw out the old way of doing things, the Lagrangian approach. Because here is the key. You don't put particles into the system. Particles aren't fundamental building blocks at all. They're emergent. They are stable patterns, or attractors, that just naturally form as the system runs.
So, in the old view, right, particles are like these fundamental Lego bricks you build reality with. But in this new view, the system's dynamics are described as a flow, a closed quadratic flow with something called intrinsic dissipation. Now, what that means is that the flow is guaranteed to settle down. And the particles we see, they're just the stable points where it settles. They're like the calm, stable whirlpools that naturally form in a flowing river.
So what about forces? What about interactions? Well, they aren't separate things either. An interaction is just the system's flow shifting from one of those stable whirlpools to another one. They're just the paths the system takes as it moves between these stable states that we perceive as particles.
Okay, this is where this new OS really starts to show off its power. Because look, a good theory doesn't just describe what we already know, right? It should predict things. And GFTM-144 makes an absolutely stunning prediction about the very structure of matter itself. It does this using a process, an algorithm, called the omega bundle elimination algorithm. What it does is it takes those 12 layers of the vacuum we talked about, and it mathematically tests every single possible way they could be bundled together. Then it runs all those possibilities through its own hard-coded stability rules, like omega lock, to see which configurations are stable enough to actually exist.
And when you run the numbers, the algorithm finds there is only one possible stable configuration for the vacuum. Just one. It has to organize itself into exactly 3 distinct bundles. We call these generations. And again, this isn't something we told the system. This is a result that pops out of its own internal logic.
This unique single solution has a name, Lock A. So in this framework, the reason there are 3 generations of matter is because any other number would literally break the rules of reality. A 4th generation isn't just something we haven't found yet. It's structurally impossible. All 12 vacuum layers are used up in this configuration. The substrate is exhausted. There's nothing left to build another.
Okay, let's just pull back for a second and look at the big picture here. What this new framework is painting for us, it's not just a new model. It's a completely different way of thinking about how the universe is put together. Think about it. We're moving away from a messy, infinite model that's covered in patches. A model where we have to tell it, by the way, there are 3 generations of particles. Instead, we're moving to a finite, clean, structurally complete system where the most fundamental features of our universe, like particles themselves, and the fact that there are exactly 3 generations of them, they just emerge naturally. Their consequences derived from the system's own rules. And that leaves us with a pretty provocative final thought. What if all those infinities that have plagued physics for a century, what if they were never actually a feature of the universe at all? What if they were just a bug in our code, in our description of it? And maybe, just maybe, reality isn't some glitchy, broken program that needs constant patching. Maybe it's a perfectly elegant finite operating system, and we are only now, finally, beginning to learn how to read the code.